chit-chatting when we come in anyway. I will monitor Facebook this evening. Since you guys are doing the moderating, sometimes it's hard for me to do both.
Oh, Bailey brought up, Bailey was asking if we could take questions live kind of while we're doing this. Would you be able to run that?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to do. So I'll be able to see what's happening streaming live. So I think we should be live right about now. And then I'm gonna post in the Zoom link as soon as I see us come up here on the screen, the streaming link so that you guys can share it out if you want to share it.
Okay, cool.
But that's gonna be me, Alan, constantly. Yeah, I'm excited for this.
Oh, same.
A lot to talk about today.
This is a very far-reaching topic, and we can go many directions with it. Hi, Previn.
Hello.
So we're live, and I just put the link for the live stream into chat, guys. So you guys should
get it
in the group chat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Word.
In the chat, in the Zoom chat. You hit chat, you should have saw something pop up in your Zoom that has one chat message there.
Yeah, I see it.
Trying to figure out on my
Zap
Facebook.
this to myself real quick.
Probably blank, because I should be able to see this right now. Okay. I am pretty sure that we are live. I'm going to go in on my phone.
Yeah, I
really
think
quick.
we are live.
We're good. For some reason, my screen wasn't trying to come up and let me actually see it. So I think we are good. Let me go to the groups really quick. All right, good people. We are in business here. Let me get myself situated, Facebook and social media world. Let me get myself situated here so that I can have Facebook up and be able to pay attention to what is happening there. Welcome, Facebook world.
So
we got an echo
always. Yeah, it's on. As soon as hold on, I'm going to mute myself here. Okay, the echo should be gone. The echo gone?
Perfect.
Excellent. So the folks can see us, and we are in the building. We have some folks coming in, so I'm going to give people a little bit of some time to come in. And T, if you can also help me manage the, just kind of pay attention to the Facebook as well. One second.
all right, all my links are sent out, I think. So I'm good to go. I don't need any more phone.
Oh, I should. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to open us all the way up so I could be sure to see everything and see the best comments as they were coming in. All righty, people. So, yeah, it's our normal Sunday Back to Love movement podcast, and we are live, and you all are live, and you are welcome to the space. Myself and some of my co-members are here. And some of our members are joining us in the chat. Natasha's already said, "What up, though?" So tonight's conversation, we're gonna jump right in. Are we ready? Everyone's ready? Hey, yo.
I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I mean, this is gonna be one of those things, good people. I was just sharing with my co-members that Back to Love is not a one-trick pony, in the sense that we kind of expand the things that we talk about and that we want to present to you guys. And it's across the board because there is no one issue that is affecting us. So we are very proud of what we do here. We are definitely gaining the attention of our local audience and our national audience. And we love you guys for being here with us. Tonight's conversation is going to be about COVID and climate change. Now that's a lot to unpack. There is no doubt that that is a lot to unpack. The two group members who actually did the research and put the outline together for tonight's podcast is Mr. Darius Mingo and Mr. Bailey Bader. Myself and T are joining them. I'm going to be a fly on the wall tonight. So let everyone introduce themselves, and then I'm going to have a short piece, an introduction to the podcast, and then I'm turning it over to our lovely host this evening. So we'll start with our host. Either one of you all can jump in and introduce yourselves to the people.
It's all you, Darius.
Let's get it. See, I do a bunch of stuff around the city, music, art, whole shebang. And I met Dawn at a poetry event, and I first heard about Back to Love through Soul as another member. And really great vibes here, great direction for what we need going forward in the future. And so I thought it was a great thing to throw my resources behind. Also done a bunch of songs with Bailey. He's a great musician, guitarist. So check some of that stuff out. I'll put links later on. Yeah, really excited for this discussion. I'm glad to be here and part of the movement.
Well,
You're up, Bailey.
my name is Bailey, aka Twizzle, and I joined the movement to educate myself on various perspectives from various people. And I, as Darius mentioned, am a musician. I'm a researcher. I'm a psychology fanatic. I have a reptile, and I like to talk about deep things because I'm not even gonna front. And then, and yeah, I mean, I'm here to have a good time and try to unpack a very dense and far-reaching topic. So I'm very interested to see how it goes.
All
Glad
right.
to be here as well.
Glad to have you, sir. T.
Hello, my name is T. That's all I have, really. I'm a content creator. It's just an honor to be a part of this group. All
What kind of
lovely
content
people.
do you create, T?
Mental health, things that have to do with mental health. That's my passion. Energy, vibrations, and frequencies, and cosmos, and all that good stuff. Is
beautiful.
Yeah.
Mwah,
That's
chef's
what I'm
kiss.
into.
I think what's so interesting about the things that we present to the world is that they all have an interlinking, right? They all have a bridge that connects them. And so as we're talking even about COVID and climate change, T brought up energy, right? And energy to me is the movement of the universe and how we are connected to it, that we couldn't exist without the universe. The universe could not exist without us, down to the smallest flea.
Why I don't kill fleas? That's just me, though.
Every other thing that exists on this planet. So even then when you're talking about COVID and climate change, how it affects the mental capacity. So there really just has not been any topic that doesn't sort of circle back to itself or to the larger idea of Back to Love movement. So I'm going to start this off just by saying, before I turn it over to our co-host, that I did a little bit of research and I learned today that the planet has undergone 5 different, 6 if you count this one, but 5 different climate changes, periods of climate change. The last one that we are aware of is the ice age, the last one that the scientists designate as a climate change was the ice age. So we're talking, millions of years ago, right? So we are now experiencing a climate change that has the planet has not undergone a climate change since the ice age. The difference between every other climate change or era or period of climate change and what we're experiencing now in terms of the warming of the globe is that all the others were the natural, were the result of the Earth's natural movement and the Earth positioning itself in the universe and still continuing really to develop, right, into the atmosphere that we experienced prior to the destruction of the ozone layer. So those of you who are about my age, I'm not going to say how old that is, but I'm going to say who are about my age. You all may remember in the late 80s, early 90s, they started talking to us about the ozone being destroyed. And it was from the emissions of the cars and from aerosols, from pollution. And what we are seeing is a continuation of that happening now. So what is different about this climate change and the others that the scientists have designated as such is that this is man-made. That what's happening to the planet now is a result of human activity. So I will leave that there. I just thought that would be a good way to sort of break open the shell, and that's just the shell. Bailey and Darius are gonna crack the shell and put it in a pan so we can fry this bad boy up. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I turn it over to my brothers Bailey and Darius. It's on y'all.
You want to lead?
Yeah, let's go. So it's important to reference timescales here. We're talking about ice ages. This is hundreds of millions of years, between each one of these stages. So while it is natural in the Earth's kind of evolution to go through periods of great climate change, it's hundreds of millions of years apart. And when that does take place, it can disrupt ecology, life, make things very unlivable for certain species, certain aspects of life. So the fact that we've kind of hastened it and brought the next ice age, quote unquote, to now is very concerning in what it will mean for life moving forward, livability, sea levels, oceans. And that's a lot of what we'll be covering in this podcast, as well as what the pandemic has done, the effect, has it helped in certain areas, has it hurt, and also solutions. There's a lot of discussion, but what can be done now that will fix and solve some of these problems. And I'm going to turn it over to Bailey soon. I just want to say he wrote up a huge outline for this. I added very little just here and there in my discussion. So big ups to Bailey and the research he's done. Very knowledgeable on this topic. And I'll turn it over to him to start us off.
Thank you, my boy. So, as previously stated, very dense topic that we have here. And it was interesting approaching this from like the perspective of wanting to synthesize different sources and talk about different things and then present it in a concise and organized fashion. So what I did to try to make it as organized and presentable as possible is I segmented the topics that we wanted to discuss into 4 different segments. Different segments we would like to focus on more than others, but also we're here to have a discussion and not necessarily just like vomit facts. So I would like to start with the presentation of the framework and then lead into the discussion with a couple of open questions as well as some facts to kind of stimulate the conversation. So I segmented the topics into 4ths. The first segment is pandemic, pollutants, and pressure, so PPP. And this is sort of highlighting the overall effects that the pandemic has had on climate change, for better or for worse, because there are good things that have come out of the pandemic in terms of climate change and contribution to emissions and the rate at which emissions are expelled into the atmosphere, as well as like how much of that is captured by the atmosphere is very much a factor. I didn't realize that until I was doing research, but not all of the pollutants that are emitted into the open atmosphere are actually retained within, you know, the external layers of the atmosphere. Some are ingested through the ocean, which creates a myriad problem, and then other, what they call pollution sinks, so other sort of reservoirs to help contain pollutants and whatnot. And I would also like to preface this with, I am in no way a climate scientist. I'm a guy who did research on the climate. So if anything is incorrect, fact check me and please let me know, because that would be greatly appreciated. I would like to know the real facts and not just the regurgitated stuff that you can get from the internet. But I made sure that almost all of my sources were sourced from non-governmental and non-commercial sites, so organizations and academic resources. So first segment, framework, yeah. So pandemic, pollutants, pressure. We're gonna go through a list of some primary issues that we're facing, and then we're gonna move on to the general shift of daily emissions and wealth disparity through the COVID-19 pandemic. So how large corporations have essentially monopolized markets to acquire this sense of getting to the point where their revenue streams are higher than percentages of the population.
Yeah, ridiculous amounts of wealth.
Yeah. And then also in the first segment, I would really like to talk about a term that I created during this process, en route to meet Darius for a meeting. And I thought that would be really interesting to discuss. But that will lead us into the second segment, which is theoretical framework for change. So this is where we can sort of brainstorm and hypothesize different ways that we can see substantive and tangible change occur in the future, as well as things that we might be able to do. This is more like theoretical, obviously. It's theoretical framework for things that we could be doing in the future to really get this train of being at least more conscious of our impact on the climate and what we can do to prevent those measures. And then the third segment, future-proofing ourselves. So emphasizing immediate action that we can take right now to help become more conscious of our impact on climate change, as well as things that we can do to further educate ourselves and cultivate resources and communicate with each other, build community surrounding these types of topics, as well as trying to understand organizations and things of that nature that really advocate for initiating change and stimulating.
Yeah, there's a lot of solutions that we have. So very looking forward to that segment.
And that leads into our final segment, which are those resources. There are only a couple, but we can certainly gather more resources in regards to that. I was thinking about maybe creating a document that withholds a plethora of resources for people if they want to acquire those resources. But
we can put those later in the chat, or not in the chat, but in the thread, the comments thread. We can, obviously you can't do it now because we've been talking, but
Yeah.
sometime tomorrow, what we can do, or sometime certainly later this week, we can put those resources attached to the thread here so that you can always come back and reference those as well. And I believe I can create a document for them in the group. So we'll be working on that for you guys this week as well.
Cool.
All righty.
So looping back around
Yeah,
to
let's
the
get into
beginning.
segment one. Let's get into this.
So segment 1, pandemic, pollutants, and pressure, PPP. I am going to start this conversation with a question. I would like to ask each of you what you do believe the primary issue that we are facing that has been created through the pandemic in terms of climate change is at the current moment. We'll start with Dawn.
Oh, we're going to start with me.
Yeah. Throw you a curveball.
Yeah, because I really have to think about that. We may need to, I mean to throw the curve to Darius or T, because I really got to think about. I don't know. That's a really good question.
I'll
I don't have
tag
an
in.
answer at this moment. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll tag in. By the way, T, dope background. I'm a big
Thank
fan.
you.
Right?
Thank you.
Somewhere in time through the space-time continuum.
Yeah, and so I got an interesting response to this, and I could go on for days literally on this, but in short, the main threat I see, or I guess concern with COVID, is the same I had pre-COVID, and that's with the leaders around the world. Not every single leader, but who is leading humanity and on what path. That's my main concern. COVID hasn't really changed that. It's brought in some hiccups, but I see to address climate change, to address COVID, as well as a bunch of other topics, you have to hit the governments, because they're the call to action that's going to get people putting policies in place, put enforcement behind things. So we need more empathetic leaders, leaders that actually care about these issues, that have incentive to change them.
Mm.
So that's my main concern. I guess secondary, once things get really crazy with climate change, if we could still stop it, but the refugee crisis. My main concern wouldn't be the refugees per se, but the response. I think you could see a lot of fascist governments or just fascist political parties taking advantage of that situation to try and further division and hate. So those are probably my two main concerns moving forward.
I think I do have an answer now. I will say
Okay.
that I will say I think that I think COVID as a whole really brought to the forefront, like Darius said, and I'm sort of piggybacking a little bit here, sort of the politicizing of things that are really affecting us, every single day, sort of this distraction from the things that we need to not be distracted from. And I think because COVID in itself, we were locked, we were glued into our televisions because we didn't have anywhere to go, and we sat here. And so you started seeing sort of, for me, it's sort of all put together that, oh my God, COVID is not the only thing that our leaders have literally ignored. I mean, it just started to really flourish for me in terms of the things that have been intentionally politicized to distract us from the overall effects that are happening to us, not just from COVID, but also from climate. And I will say that I think this is not necessarily the changes that COVID made to. I will say, I think that the weakness of our climate right now is the reason that we see things like COVID happening and being able to affect the populations the way that it has. This is, and we, in a way, they've been telling us this, science has been telling us this for a long time, with H1N1 and SARS and Zika. These were all things that were found in animal populations, and people want to say it's because people are eating animals or sleeping with animals or mishandling. I don't think that's what's happening. I think because even if that was the case, it takes a really long time. Generally, it would normally have taken a really long time for viruses that were found only in animals to mutate enough to actually affect humans, and then to be able to spread human to human. That's not something that just happens over the course of a year, right?
Mhm.
So I think the atmosphere is something that we have done to the planet has allowed those types of viruses to mutate faster in a way that it affects us fast, that we spread it human to human faster. I don't know that there's any science behind that at all, but the reason that it makes logical sense to me is that if we are connected to the universe and everything exists, not in silos, if we all exist in sort of this whole ecosystem, then it makes sense to me that if the planet is changing, then human life is changing.
Yes.
If the bees can disappear, something is happening. So to think that we're watching all this happen in the atmosphere and it not affect us, it's like, it's just, there's just no logic to that to me.
And
So,
that's the power of rhetoric.
yeah, that's it for me.
In a nutshell, just crack it right open, I guess. How about you? What do you think is the primary issue that's been instigated through this whole situation?
A lot of manipulation, that's for sure. But even before COVID, it's the same thing. It's in my perspective, mass production. Like, as we evolve in, humanity and technology, it's also causing harm to the earth, which is, of course, affecting our health. And we are connected to the earth. So anything that the earth is going through, we are too. Like, you notice, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of a sudden, these different new diseases and stuff like that just all of a sudden come out of nowhere. They didn't just come out of nowhere, they formed in some kind of way. And I also noticed during lockdowns, the earth was actually able to rest because there weren't so many people driving and, producing things for people to buy. We didn't have time. Everything was shut down. So the earth was able to heal in that little short time that we had. And we also healed on a different level as well. If we sat still long enough, there were things that came up personally,
Yeah.
So,
Great points.
So,
honestly, if there's a question to someone else in the chat, I can't see the Facebook live stream. I wonder if
I'm watching it. There's nothing. I just put, if anyone has any thoughts that they want to add or any questions, please be sure to do so. So I'm watching the comments as they come in.
Yeah, just let us know if any questions are asked. We will certainly address them when they come in. So,
see, that was powerful, sis. I just had to say that real quick.
It was, yeah. And I had that same thought at the beginning of the pandemic. I was working at the museum center in Cincinnati, and I was one of the first people that I knew to go into self-isolation. People literally thought I was crazy. And so once everything sort of shifted and people recognized that it was a serious thing, I started to, rationalize with myself and think logically about the inherent changes that were going to be brought about by the pandemic. And one of them was that the earth is going to be able to have some time to breathe, even if it's just a minute period of time, because we're going to have a decrease in fuel emissions from cars because people are going to be at home. If not working remotely, then not working. Unfortunate, but that's another topic that we can certainly dive into at some point in the future. But my response to the question that I posed to you all, I can certainly summarize concisely as we need more sustainable and effective methods of energy, like sustainable energy sourcing, recycling, and converting different materials into energy. Because I'm going to read something real quick that was definitely a focal point of my research. Because in my document, I did put one of the primary issues, and what I feel to be the primary issue, is the usage of disposable plastics has risen. Because I worked at a restaurant in management when the pandemic had started. So this was after I left the museum center, and I had a period of about 6 months with my parents, and I wasn't working during that time. I was just finishing school. And then once I got out, moved out, went back to work, and I was pretty much involuntarily forced to, wear and reuse gloves, like not plastic gloves, but sterile gloves that you
disposable gloves.
Disposable gloves, yeah.
Quote unquote.
So I went in and I was like, oh, I felt so dirty. And then I just thought over time, I was like, this is happening everywhere. Every restaurant that's open right now is doing the same thing, same with disposable masks. And first, before I lead into this little excerpt from this article that I read, I wanted to offer this statistic just for perspective. The global plastic packaging market size is projected. This article was written in 2020. So the global plastic packaging market size was projected to grow by $103.4 billion from 2019 during the pandemic. And so that would place the previous market size in 2019 was $909 billion, and it increased to over $1 trillion throughout the pandemic. So it was sitting somewhere in the range of $1.01 trillion. So, like, that's ridiculous. Pretty large.
And what's ridiculous to me about that is we have alternatives.
Yeah.
Plastic. It's 2021. It's not like 30 years ago. There are efficient alternatives to plastics that we could be using. There's many things that could be done to curb this. And with climate change on the horizon, there's no reason, even in a pandemic, that this metric should rise to such a ridiculous measure.
Yep.
So the suggestion here is what you're saying is that the reason that, like everything else that drives the world, money is the reason that they want to invest in other sustainable means. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, that's probably the bulk of the reason, I would say. Because if you have enough money, and other countries it's kind of fine, but in America, if you have enough money, you can start buying politicians, namely the Republican Party, to put disincentives on alternative plastic, manufacturers' use. You can subsidize plastic, There should be a tax on plastic. You would think if it's causing so much destruction to the environment,
wow,
which taxpayers pay for to clean up, you'd think there'd be some type of tax to incentivize other means of wrapping and containership, but it's just all plastic. I wonder why. I think Don brings a great point up with money is involved,
And we will elaborate on that exact topic in the second segment, because we actually, with the theoretical framework of how we can see change occur, that's very much a possibility. It's a matter of allocating resources that government powers have that the populace doesn't have, and actually subsidizing different things that will allow for establishments to continue running their business in an environmentally ethical way, in an environmentally conscious way. And it's going to take a while to get there, but it's possible. Like very soon. It's just you got to have a plan. You got to have a step-by-step gradual plan. Having radical change immediately happen leads to catastrophe. So unfortunately that is the case. But like I found this other piece of information where it was like packaged takeout meals and home delivered groceries contributed an additional 1,400 tons of plastic waste during Singapore's 8-week lockdown last year. So it's like, and that's wild. Like when I was still at the museum center, one of my coworkers told me before the pandemic, this is outside of the pandemic context, we were having a conversation about recycling one day, and I learned that America actually exports all of their recyclable materials to other countries. And that was China for decades. And then China stopped taking our recyclable plastics because of a piece of legislation that they wrote off, which was like the SWORD Act or something like that. And guess what we did? We just went to different countries after China who were not as environmentally conscious, or I guess intolerant than others. And we just like exported all of our recyclable materials to them, and it continues to happen. And these are developing countries like Kenya and Cambodia. Like, no, that's incredibly nefarious, because all you're doing is exploiting these people for your runoff supply of reusable material, when like I don't know if there is at the moment like a sustainable way to convert recyclable plastic materials or recyclable materials in general into source like ethically and sustainably sourced energy sources. But like that's the type of innovation that we're going to need if we're going to like if we're going to curb our chances of catastrophe in the near future. That's like what has to happen. But
I agree with PI.
Let me just say this: if scientists can figure out how to grow a watermelon without a seed,
yeah,
yeah, we'll get there.
Or grow meat in a laboratory.
There's an absolute way. So there's some lobbying happening. Something else is happening to prevent that. Because I mean, come on, we're talking about something.
Chemistry is an incredibly important science.
Tilapia in one freaking bowl. You don't even need a sink, you should bowl. Okay, I'm done.
You don't need to even convert plastic, right? You just recycle it and reuse the same plastic. You don't have to turn it into something else.
Right.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. And now we've graduated to the 6th grade. All right. Cool beans.
Also, I want to, this is a pet peeve of mine, but I think recycling is great, right? And that campaign is good, get more Americans to recycle. But I think something a little insidious about this is it puts the blame on everyday people. It's like the average person needs to recycle. That's why the world is fucked up. When you look at pollution rates, corporations outpollute everyone to ridiculous measures. A packing facility down the street probably produces, I wouldn't say probably, it does produce more pollution than 50,000 residents. If you look at cruise ships, cruise liners. So everyone should recycle still, but it's not really our fault we're in this predicament. They've been dumping shit in the oceans en masse way more than we ever could. So I just want to throw that in there.
But it's all of our responsibility too. Like You know what I'm saying?
Even
Yes,
if it's just
it's up to
educating
us now.
ourselves. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
the only people that have the potential to make change is the population. And if people don't participate in a certain activity that stimulates the economy or that contributes to the rapid fluctuation in our weather patterns and climate change in general, like that's something that could happen. It's like I have this thought experiment that I love to return back to because it's tastefully controversial. I feel like if you thought about you woke up tomorrow and nobody on earth decided to shop at Target or at Walmart, what would happen? Unbelievable. What if nobody buys anything on Amazon? That riddle me that. That is like,
That's what I'm talking.
yeah. But
That's what I'm talking.
it's possible, but it is very, very, very unlikely because these are the things that actually drive home this sense of like normalcy at this point. I mean, it's so ingrained, like Amazon is so ingrained into the fabric of our society at this point that we can't even envision, like we can't even fathom not having Amazon because it's just completely revolutionized our way of.
Unless you put it in a movie or something like that.
And you know what? Maybe Black Mirror can commission me to write a screenplay and have that happen. Maybe we'll see. But
turn it
that's
into a
my
sci-fi.
Yeah. I'd have a field day with that. I'd get everybody in on that. I think Bradley would especially have that on lock.
So just real quick here, we do have a comment I want to throw out. Natasha, our group member says, see, that's the thing, getting people to care enough about the environment to participate in things like recycling and what doing these things are going to help sustain us in the continuum of our existence. And I agree. I mean, I think there was a huge push, in the early 90s for recycling, but I do agree that when those type of huge campaigns are launched, it's like, like Darius said, like, see, I fucked up the planet. It's y'all's responsibility to fix it. And something says to me that even if everybody was recycling, that you still have these large corporations. Even if every household was recycling, you still have these large corporations that are probably doing more damage than household to household. So I think the responsibility has to be bigger than just the residents.
Yes.
And more than recycling, for sure.
Accountability. It's
accountability.
huge. Accountability is something that's a
is that the caring part, I think, to me, is us caring enough to push the people who can make the changes.
Yeah.
So I think that's the caring part, right? So education is definitely key. And the things that we can change, we can't seem to get a collective around pushing the people who can make those changes happen.
Yes.
So, oh man, I could go on about this for so long. I'm just gonna move. Well, I mean, we've kind of covered the wealth disparity and daily emissions segment at this point. I mean, the only thing that I would really have to contribute to that is recognizing the role of fast food companies in this entire situation, because I mean, there are a lot of populations of individuals that can't afford to stockpile groceries at their house or even like buy food for a week, because I mean, there is a large impoverished population, not just in the country, but I mean, food security is an enormous problem in other, especially underdeveloped countries. So, we're also seeing a monopolization and an exploitation of the population through fast food. So like Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and Taco Bell and all these, these establishments that really capitalize on the opportunity to give people what they need, because I mean that's a big line of thought that is really long and dense, but it's like that's what's happened. Is there are a lot of people who have been out of work because of the pandemic, and they've not been able to feed themselves or their children if they have a family. And so it's like, what do? They have to acquire the most accessible option possible. And so therein lies the major corporation exploiting the situation again. But it's like, we can't do anything about it because we're in that period of time where we're still curating the momentum of these infrastructures. So it's like, it's hard to just say like, we have to completely not participate in contributing to that infrastructure, because some people don't have a choice. But that's where I feel like accountability comes into play. It's like holding a lot of these governmental infrastructures accountable for not providing any sort of, that's where it gets tough, because then people are like, socialism. It's like, but people are dying out here, man. But
we don't even have to discuss socialism, but
no.
Everyone can agree that there are certain areas where the government should step in and help out. What is the fire department? I don't think anyone is logically going to argue against a fire department. If you want to privatize fire departments, you can see how that goes bad. So when it comes to food, if the most accessible form of food for a lot of Americans is fast food, which isn't even real food in a lot of places, it's sugarized, hormonalized, stuff like that. That's a crime against humanity. The government should step in that instance to provide their citizens quality food, at least staple food, rice or something. Is it bad to give everyone a bag of rice every week? Like, is that so? What's the demonization in that? That's just part of human experience. I thought that's what a government was for, was to help people out when they're down.
You know what, Darius, even bigger than that, right? Because we have to look at it this way too, right? Those fast food restaurants also they're also commerce. They also employ people who would otherwise not potentially have skills for other types of jobs. And here's why I bring that up. When I started going to Jamaica in 1999, it was just Jamaican culture. It was fresh food. It was, how they eat. If you didn't eat callaloo, then too bad for you. Wasn't no American food there. Okay.
Yep.
Then when we used to stay in a part, Montego Bay has always been more globalized than sort of the inner parts of Jamaica. So we used to stay in a place called Negril. And it was about an hour and a half from Montego Bay to Negril on this road that was like, I can't even explain to you. It wasn't a paved road. And literally it was around the bases of shanty towns. And shanty towns are these little towns that sit inside of coves of mountains, right? And so we were driving, literally the water was here and the mountain was here. Like, on these roads, and I'm thinking to myself, is the person driving in the opposite direction on this same road? Like, hold up, like that type of situation, right? I went every year until about that was 1996 when I first went. And about 2004, 2005, we went, and there was a paved road, what they would consider a highway. Right. And it cut through everything. It was a straight shot. It cut through all of the beautiful stuff that we got to see driving through these little bitty cities. It sort of cut all of that out, or these little parishes. And about 2 years after the road was paved, guess what showed up in the grill? McDonald's, KFC, and Burger King. Okay. Now the people who live there, for me, I cried. I'll be honest with you. 2007, when I went, I cried. I was so hurt to see McDonald's and KFC in the grill. Like, I just couldn't grasp what was happening. The people who lived there saw it as commerce. All I could think about was, I don't know if you guys remember the scene in The Color Purple when they were saying, the road is coming, the road is coming, the road is coming. The road opened up a way for them to be able to transport the materials they needed to build a KFC and a McDonald's. So that put people to work. The McDonald's was built and they needed cashiers and they needed managers and they needed people who cleaned up, and that put people to work. And so there's sort of this sort of, I don't know, this dichotomy that's happening in terms of fast food that, to me, when I look at what the government could do for that, is build a market. Why not build a fast food market in place of the Burger King? It's going to do the same thing. It's going to employ people that have to build it. It's
going to employ more
going to
people.
have to clean it. Yeah, exactly. It will employ the farmers more. Like, so there is an answer, and the answer may not necessarily be to give people anything. If we're so afraid of this socialism, right, which is bullshit, because every corporate bailout is socialism, but we're not going to go there today. That's not the topic today. I think that's what we talk about in terms of the things that we should push our government to do is when I grew up, there was a market in my neighborhood that we could walk to and we could get fresh food. So why not build a Burger King and a market next door to it?
Without
why not have more gardens?
Exactly.
Yes.
This
exactly.
also helps with the earth as well.
Community gardens.
With climate change and all of that, gardens, not lawns.
Yep.
Community gardens are, I hope, to be the future. I know of many people from different parts of the world, one of which comes into mind particularly, which is Canada. Somebody that I follow on YouTube, this brilliant mathematician, just does like podcasts and stuff like that. Their name is Chicho. If it just a little plug, check their workouts. Brilliant.
Spell it.
Yeah, please.
So it's CHYCHO. This guy I've been watching for a really long time, and they talk about a lot of similar topics that we do. So it's about, different things that are happening, especially in the Middle East, and as well as, not necessarily climate, but more finance and economics, mathematics. And there are also really fun things like gardening and food cooking and whatnot. And then there are like live streams where they talk about esoteric or general topics of interest. But one podcast that I was listening to, they brought up the idea of community gardens and how to really get the momentum of the food security problem, like really going to try to like remedy that, because you establish a community garden for a certain town and you can have some people in the population come and they can plant their seeds and they can take a certain amount of food that they would need to use to cook that week. I know not a lot of people cook nowadays. It's like not necessarily as prevalent as it used to be, but like with the pandemic, it's been a great time to learn how to cook. If you haven't known how to cook, I've been cooking all the time, and I wish there was a community garden around, because like you could go and you can grab some tomatoes and you could do like a take one, leave one type of thing, where you can keep a little like a seed bank and you can go and plant a seed, or you can help maintain the garden in some way, shape, or form. But when I first heard that, I was like, yeah, that's like an immediate solution to a population that might have a lack of food security. And that's a great idea that I think should be pushed more. But we aren't going to start seeing these things happen unless we apply pressure to the governmental infrastructure. which leads into the term that I wanted to talk about in the podcast, and that is implicit pressure. And in this context, which is what I created it for, the climate change context, and I guess the socioeconomic impact of it, the definition is the natural surfacing of concern that occurs within a population in a time of crisis where people begin to realize that authority figures exploit the masses. And when those people become aware of this reality, the more the population that demands change as a byproduct of their awareness, therefore, they put more pressure on authority figures to make substantial change. And I do feel, and that ties in with what Natasha said, education is key. It is. Like, the more people that have access to resources that either instill a sense of consciousness, I state that reluctantly, but the more people are aware of what's happening, the more literate they will want to become about the subject if it concerns them. I mean, like, I didn't really care about anything in regards to these things 4 years ago, and it wasn't until an extremely profound experience with other people and just my own rational mind that I was like, oh, things need to happen right now. So it was an immediate shift. And when that happened, what's
really
up?
exacerbating this, the internet.
Yeah.
Before governments could control, suppress through, news, through TV stations, they could kind of quell the spreading of ideas, information they deem unfit, to that institution. With the internet, there's so much exchange going on. A corrupt government can no longer fully suppress information. It's just impossible at this stage. And this is leading to that term, Bailey coined, implicit pressures. A lot of people are waking up and saying, wait a minute, this is bullshit. They're extorting this and this. They're kind of, what's that, the wool coming from their eyes, or the whatever it's called.
The
People are
veil
seeing,
being lifted.
the veil being lifted. I just thought this was a great term Bailey brought up. And you would think in the American, language lingo, there's a word for almost everything. Why is there not a word for this yet? Implicit pressure. I wonder why. I wonder if it's problems.
I thought that it was important to note that, because over and over again, time and time again, there surfaces this sense of urgency in these types of conversations. And, it's one of those things where people nothing's going to change unless the people demand change, not just verbally, but through their actions. Like, in the past year, I have done as much as I can to not order from Amazon, because I don't believe that supporting that is ethical anymore. That's just my opinion. I understand people depend on it, and that's totally understandable. But like, I wouldn't have gotten to that point unless I would have, if I wouldn't have listened to various perspectives and had multiple conversations with people about the ethical nature of these types of mega corporations exploiting the masses and taking advantage of a situation where people need resources, but they need them in a particular way. It's tough because it's very convenient, and that's the Amazon effect, is like best prices, most accessible method of acquisition. It's perfect. It's literally perfect. But like, that's the implicit problem with that sort of idea, is that it evolves into this massive thing that just takes control of everything. And then
there wasn't alternatives, right? You didn't really have a choice not to buy from Amazon.
Right. Yep. Right. And that's the question, right? So it's like anything else, right? Here's why I think that people tend not to care about certain things or certain movements. Because we sort of talk about what the issues are, and we even mobilize against those issues. But in order for it to be important to people, or for people to gravitate to it, I think we have to have an alternative solution, right? So it was at one point we were talking about, oh, we must boycott Kroger. Well, we have to have places for people to buy their food, right? So, and I'll use this example. When the Montgomery bus boycott, when the reason that it became so big and the reason that it was able to make the type of change that it did was because they didn't just tell people not to ride the bus. These people had to go to work, right? They had things they had to do. So they said, what we'll do in place of you riding the buses, we will have walking groups where people are able to get to work safely, because there was still a lot of violence going on too, and people were mad, they were boycotting, so people were getting beat up on the streets and that kind. So we will walk in groups to protect each other. For everyone in the neighborhood who has a car, we will carpool, we will get people to work, you know. So if we're going to say take away from, then what here's I think where the government comes is then we have to pressure them to then replace it with something that is comparable and can allow people to still get the things that they need. And so when you talk about sort of these systemic changes happening and these type of drastic changes, you're right, Bailey, they do not happen in explosive ways. They have to happen in small ways. And we got to figure out what the small piece is. Where's the first chip that we chip away at?
Exactly.
Another thing, it has to be effective. Like if it's irrelevant, if it's too irrelevant and everybody's still living their best lives, there's not going to be an interest in change. You know what I'm saying? It has to literally hit the heart and hit home. Just like COVID, it hit home, people start taking it seriously. But others didn't because it's not that serious to them. You know what I'm saying? This change has to really hit, you know, in order for that change to happen. Eyes have to be open and it has to come from a feeling. You know what I'm saying? And then the solutions, of course.
Yeah, and therein lies the dichotomy of this entire problem, is the quote unquote proverbial or metaphorical battle between ignorance and rationalized thought, or rational thought. You know, I know multiple groups of people from both sides of that dichotomy, and it's like, I can certainly tell you that I'm aligned with a certain side of that pendulum, but you know, it's one of those things where it's certainly humbling to see the lengths that people that you love will go to just completely disregard your concern for their health and well-being just to uphold their ideology or any sort of justification for their ignorance and for their inability to cope with their own discomfort with a situation that makes them uncomfortable. And I feel like that's the dynamic issue. But it's like, you can't, like Martin Luther King said, you can't regulate people's behaviors, or sorry, you can't, what was it? I'm not trying to misquote MLK. Come on, man. You can't legislate behavior, but you can regulate, or you can't legislate behavior, but you can regulate action. Something like that.
I'm gonna
apologize for.
Go ahead. I'm gonna find it for you.
It's in A Testament of Hope. I have it right here. I researched that speech. I feel awful right now. But so it's right here. Hold on.
I get the premise of what he's saying, you know.
Yeah, I get it.
Morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. So yeah. It's very much a situation of a moral standing. You know, that's unfortunately a primary issue that has resulted from COVID, is this dynamic conflict between people who deliberately choose to uphold their ignorance and the people who are looking out for the well-being of themselves and the people that they care about and the population at large, because, you know, each decision influences the world on a macrocosmic level. I mean, it's energy. It all comes.
Everything is energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Natasha said, hey, Bailey, Natasha said about the quote, don't feel awful, Bailey. We appreciate the sentiment, brother.
That's
right.
Yeah.
At least you brought him up, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speech in and of itself could be the subject of a 2-hour podcast, but
we're gonna have to check it out.
I thought it was fascinating. It was a very, very good speech. So I want to move things along just a little bit because I want to get to these other segments. The fourth is just going to be a quick breeze over because it's just resources that I do have for people to access if they want them. But I mean, with what we were just talking about, that sort of helps us instigate a seamless transition into the second segment, which is theoretical framework for change. So, you know, community gardens, I want to resurface what you were talking about earlier, Darius, with the government subsidization of, you know, different resources for restaurants or for marketplaces to be built as a replacement for fast food restaurants. Darius and I were talking on our hike that we had when we were talking about this, of having rubber or why can't I've been working in restaurants for 6 years. I can't believe I can't remember this, but you know, just using rubber gloves, replacing that with washable gloves that, you know, each employee that works at a restaurant could get a pair or two of, that are created using reusable resources or recycled resources, that are washable, reusable, you know, things that can be washed as you would wash your hands while you're working. So, you know, that's a thought that we had, was having these governmental entities taxing the products that are causing the most harm to the environment, while also using the money that they acquire through the taxation of these resources to subsidize washable gloves and garments that are made out of reusable material. Especially like the medical industry can certainly be impacted by this. And I wish Natasha was on here to talk about this too, because I'd love to get her input on this type of idea. Natasha, if you want to put anything in the chat in regards to this whole thought, then I would love to hear your perspective. But, you know, using our minds and our innovative thought processes to understand how we can start manipulating resources that are otherwise discarded to, you know, provide establishments that are essential to the functioning of our economy, and in the process easing the damage that we are inherently doing to the climate as a result.
Yes, there's a clear solution here. You know, if you put a tax on plastic disposable gloves, and one of the arguments to that is the economic, you know, incentive, right? If a small business, you know, they need 1,000 gloves for a day or maybe a week. If all of a sudden they have to pay $15 for gloves that were normally, I don't know, $1 each, they could go bankrupt. So that's the main argument to this. But there's an easy solution: is the government provides subsidies to those small businesses to offset that rising cost. You know, now they won't go bankrupt. The gloves, the washable ones, will be the same price as the disposable ones thanks to government subsidies. So there's clear solutions. Also, a majority of these disposable plastic gloves are made overseas currently, you know, predominantly China, all that stuff. So if you put a tax on those single-use disposable gloves, you're going to need manufacturing to make washable, reusable gloves. Put that in America, you know. And a bunch of businesses need that, especially during a pandemic. Think of how many jobs that would create in this country. You know,
Yep.
if it means production. So there's so many solutions here. It's just, I feel like things have gotten so extreme, you know, so crazy, so misaligned in the society we live in, that a lot of the solutions are common sense. It's just there's been so much propaganda, misinformation.
Too much.
This way. Yeah.
We're so
It would be
detached
nice
from
if
our
we
own
can,
humanity.
If we can use those plastic
Sorry,
bottles
I
and
coughed.
jugs and turn those into something.
Yeah, it's kind of what you said in the beginning of the podcast, T, right? And that one of the great things that happened while we were on lockdown was that the universe the planet got a chance to rest.
Yeah.
And sometimes, this is how the universe takes care of itself. Man has been doing awful things to the universe for a long time. Something
Lots of bad juju for a long time.
Yeah, something always happens when we refuse to slow down ourselves and just stop spinning for a minute. Something always happens. The universe always finds a way to make us sit down. I personally wish the lockdown could have lasted longer. I got more accomplished. I mean, I got so much accomplished from just not being busy every moment of my day. Goodness
As
gracious.
Darius likes to frame it, the Native American schedule.
Yes, I hope.
Because of exposure, and this is to your question, Bailey, and this is you asking her to jump in. Because of exposure to bodily waste, perhaps the usage of a more environmentally friendly material. Disposable is essential due to infection control or slowing down of the spreading of pathogens.
That's where it gets really, really hard.
Well, what's interesting is that so in creating something like that, you don't just have people who are, you don't just have people who deal with commerce. You don't just have people who, you have these range of people at the table who can say, that's actually a great idea, some form of washable, maybe the soap has to change so that it's a disinfectant of some sort. But without that perspective, right, we may very well put the medical industry at harm without someone there saying, wait, I work on that front line. We have feces on our gloves. That kind of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, I just threw that out because that was most the nastiest thing I could think of that was spread.
That happens. I was thinking, you know how people have the morphine drip button when they get surgery? So when they're sitting in their hospital bed after surgery, pressing the button, instead of that, we need PPE suits for people who work in the medical industry and have a shower head attached to a canister of water or sanitizer. So we have self-sanitizing super suits. That is the 22nd century, my friends.
Sure, like a startup. I wanted to, T.I. mentioned something that I want to talk about since we're discussing solutions. But she mentioned lawns, gardens. And I think lawns are such a crazy idea. It's normal to us, but the fact that everyone with the house has to have grass in their front, mowed to the same specification, that's crazy. I don't know who pitched that idea, how it caught on. But instead of lawn, just put garden, grow fruit, grow food if you can, grow whatever you can in your front lawn. Who cares if it's all perfectly flat? You have to go mow it. If you garden it, you only have to mow it all the time. It'd be so much less maintenance, and you'd save so much money on food.
But it wouldn't look as nice.
Yeah. But you know how much
how long it takes. Darius, what about property value? No, you know I'm being a jerk, right?
I was in real estate, but I could kiss my ass. It can look nice.
But that's the devil's advocate to play against what you were saying. Yep. So I think when we start talking about these solutions, we have to come up with almost every possible throwback, you
Yep.
know, everything that would kick back to us and having a response for it, you know. So
Well, one is like I did some research on soil and how long it takes for soil to naturally grow or whatever the case is. It takes between 100 and 400 years for soil to create itself. And this is how much, you know, from building all of these buildings and stuff like that, soil has been destroyed from all of this. You know what I'm saying? And it takes that long. It took the earth to build that long to create life itself. And you know what I'm saying? So that's another reason this is something we can argue with, you know, with the governments and stuff like that. This is why it's so important for us to garden, because we need, you know, to nourish the earth again, like mushrooms and fungus and stuff like that, that moisturizes the earth. So like if we bring this to a scientific level, because that science talks nowadays, you know what I'm saying? That's what gets attention. You know, if we talk in a scientific way, like this could actually create, you know, a buzz too. Like this is why we need to do this instead of blocking the sun.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should continue instigating that action, because I think that would help humanity in myriad ways. So
Yeah.
indeed.
I want to bring a story in. This is a little, I found it interesting, but I mean, it's no question that the more healthy your environment, the healthier you become. I think people don't understand how much, you know, nature, plants, just having living stuff around you can affect your health in a positive way. And this was some yogi on YouTube or whatever, but he's talking about a time he gave a talk out in the desert somewhere. And everyone was in the heat, you know, he was talking for about an hour. They were dying, they were starting to fall asleep, you know, pass out damn near. And at the end of the hour, he had everyone go and move underneath a tree that was nearby in the shade. And everyone just got this huge sense of relief, because a tree takes in what we breathe, you know, it's clean air. And having about 100 people sit under this tree at once, they were breathing with the tree. It was a clear exchange and they could feel that. So having healthy plants, life around you, it has such a huge effect on your mindset, on your body. It's so beneficial. So yeah,
I saw a video or documentary or something like that compared you know, environment and stuff like that. Like if you go to the hood, it's not a lot of trees and nature and stuff like that. It's buildings, it's concrete. There's no life, and our bodies are connected to the earth. And if there's no life around, what all do you have? Like what is the connection? And they did, you know what I'm saying?
Even
They did a
deeper.
study. Huh?
How do you value life
If there is no life
if there's no
around.
life around?
And we're not taught how to take care of life. This
Listen.
dirt that's in your hand, and to see and watch it grow. This is how we grow. We are seeds. You know what I'm saying? If you connect nature to ourselves, like if I compare myself to a tree or a seed, I see that if I put this inside of my body, if I put this inside of my mind and my spirit, I can become this. Just like this seed that was given this and became, you know what I'm saying, it bared so much beautiful fruit. It's, you know what I'm saying, it's parallel.
We were made just like the
Nature
universe. I mean,
versus nurture.
Nature versus, yes. I mean, we were made in the likeness of the universe. So we create life the same way that the universe creates life. Yo, I have like a jungle almost in my house, and I keep adding to the amount of plant life that I have in my house. Because I have a relationship with my plants. I know that sounds, I don't know what that sounds like.
I'm a plant mom too, it's okay.
Yeah, I have such a relationship with them, and I know when they need to be turned towards the patio, so that it's so interesting that when I go to sleep at night and I've turned them, because they lean towards the sun, right? So they grow towards the light, right? And I turn them because they're getting heavy on one side. When I wake up in the morning, they've already started to move again back toward the window. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I know that sounds, I don't know what that sounds like.
No,
but
I understand.
Yes,
oh my God,
yes,
it's something beautiful to see every day.
it is.
My
Yeah.
filet
It's
of
so small,
pepperoni
something so
says thank
small
you.
to be wasteful.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Little baby money tree. So, on that note,
You
we
learn a
can
lot from nature.
certainly start talking about ways that we can ourselves take initiative and help future proof ourselves um, by being, well, I guess by acquiring the resources that one can acquire to become more environmentally conscious. Um, as well, I really do believe that, you know, helping yourself and others understand that like the dichotomy of nature versus nurture and the relationship and the symbiotic relationship that we have with the natural world, it is certainly interlinked with mental health. And we were talking about this at the park, and we wanted to use the fictitious part 2 of last week's podcast to sort of ease into this podcast. But things happen, obviously. But it's a symbiotic and very much interlinked relationship that we have with plants and just the plant kingdom in general. So what I've come to find personally is enriching my mind with content and information and science that really helps me come to a better understanding of our relationship with the plant kingdom, as well as how we can help disperse and disseminate resources to help other people understand our relationship with them. It's really, really important. I only have a couple bullet points on this segment, and I'll just breeze over those real quick. So it's just future proofing ourselves, things we can do now to make ourselves more energy conservative and environmentally mindful. Reading, like, I don't know what else to say there. We live in the age of information, internet, library. You got Amazon if you want it. It's like YouTube, thrift books, like go nuts. But it's easy. It is very easy to just let Netflix or YouTube dictate what information comes into your mind. I feel like it is a ritual to actually consume information through a physical medium. I feel like it's definitely like a different experience because you're not straining your eyes and you're detached from everything else and you're fully attended to that content. That's just me though. Yeah.
Definitely not.
It is not the same. So, other than reading, I have advocacy, getting involved with certain efforts that are being created in your local community and within the political landscape of the area that you live in. I know it's different for any given area because some areas are just inherently more conservative or evolved to be more conservative or liberal than others. But, signing petitions and canvassing and getting involved, trying to get some sort of allocation of resources into organizations and efforts that we care about. Certainly a goal of mine to become financially independent so that I can use the supplemental income that I do get to fund things that I do care about. Because I feel like in the grand scheme of things, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, the way that we are going to make substantial change in the inherent dynamic issue that underlies this entire thing is money. And so what are we going to have to do to see the change that we really think is going to make a difference is allocation of resources. And, it's also a decision to use supplemental income to fund things that we care about, but it's not an obligation. Like, people enjoy what they enjoy, and that I do too. It's like, I don't
Mm.
funnel all my money that I have lying around into things that I care about, but like, I feel like getting into a state of mind where you know that, you know, maybe like there comes a time where something's happening that you really care about that really needs funding. It's like, if you have the money laying around, that's great. But, you know, that's a touchy subject, I know. But I do feel like that is one of the main reasons that we're going to really make the change that we want to see, is like really putting our money where our mouth is. And it's going to
But I
take a
think
lot
we
of...
can do that in pieces, Bailey. I think
Oh,
we can
yeah.
do giving in pieces. I think what happens is people hear that and they think that you have to be super rich to do charity, right? To give in that kind of way. And my CEO is probably one of the like just most insightful men I know to be a CEO, right? Because you have an opinion, you have sort of this image of what a CEO is, and he isn't that. He is so far from that. But we have a giving campaign at work, and instead of saying I want everybody to give $100, what he says is we'll do it $2 per pay period. It'll just come out of your payroll, $2 from everyone in the organization. And people are apt to do that because they think,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what the hell am I going to do with $2 anyway? They never even, they don't miss it. They don't see it. They don't think about it. It's coming out pre-tax. So they literally just, it's just not, I mean, it's been happening now for, I don't even know how long. And I can't tell you I missed that $2. But over the course of a year, if you have, 500 people, 26 times a year giving $2 out of it,
Big difference. Mm-hmm.
it's something so completely different. So I think there's an attractive way to get people to give. And I know this is going to sound really cliche, but every little bit does count. You don't have to solve the world's problems by yourself.
Energy.
Totally. So it's energy. And to answer the first part of your question, and then because I know we're winding down to the last segment, is one thing that you can do in your house is use 40-watt bulbs. Like, nobody needs 100-watt bulbs. Like,
Except for this guy, that's an exception. This guy needs the high wattage.
No, people come.
That's different for the baby.
Yeah, baby needs heat.
Oh, and they're like, what is going on in here? I mean, it's not that I live like a vampire, but seriously, I don't have more than 40-watt bulbs in any place in the house.
I like the natural light. Open up some windows.
At the night, like, yeah.
Also, mood light.
LED light bulbs. Have you guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can get those for free. If you just Duke, they will send you like
2 boxes.
Customer, they will send you these energy efficient bulbs. Every year you get a whole box.
Yep.
And they last forever. I have not done with the box I got last year. They just sent me another.
That's why I still got my boxes. They last for a long time.
Yep. And to elaborate on that a little bit, I definitely do not want to restrict my definition of resources to monetary resources.
Right.
I'm going to loop back to something I said last week on the podcast, and I'm going to make the statement that time is currency. And giving your time and your energy and your resources, like your services, and dedicating that to efforts that you think the community or the earth needs, that's how it's going to be done. And it's like, I feel like now is the perfect time to start theorizing how we're going to manifest that, because especially with this resource fair that you've been talking about, Dawn, absolutely brilliant idea that I do think should come to life, because not only are people fiending to be outside, myself included, but also people in the past year have realized that things aren't what they seem. some people more than others, but like in my specific case, I certainly put off acknowledging the urgency of some things needing to be handled, like right now, you know, like prejudice and like famine and like poverty, like wealth disparity. Like these things are things that are just there. However, we can't do much about them as individuals. But if, like I said, if we do come together and like Natasha said, education is the change, like that's what I really feel is going to bring us to a sense of tangible change. And, you know, continuing to communicate, continuing to broaden our horizons, expand and permeate different spheres of community.
These problems are created, you know.
So we have to be the change we want to see.
Indeed.
But we are a resource. Back to Love movement is a resource. It's in our mission. The whole point of this was to be a resource to the community. We're not trying to tell you what to do or how to live. We simply want to be a resource to have you navigate the things that matter to you. Everything doesn't have to matter to you, but the things that do, sometimes things matter to people and they don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we come in.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
I think it's a pretty damn good job, people.
Yes.
Agreed.
And I want
My
to
heart chakra is open.
Hey, chakra. In regards to your time thing you brought up, Bailey, time is measured in our economic model currently. If you think of how is someone worth $1 billion, you know, where is that coming from? They don't have 1 billion like gold nuggets, you know, that is an accumulation of the time they've taken from other human beings, you know, so that's already factored. So I just wanted to bring that up.
What's the dollar worth? I don't know, because our school systems. Anyways. So on that note, I will also bring up the importance of voting and petitioning, which I do have a link to the Patagonia Action Works, which is an organization that I came across last summer through an artist that I follow. And it's essentially a website where you can get on there and you can just sign petitions and just like keep signing petitions. So it's like change.org, except it's a different site. But, you know, just little small things. I admittedly, like, I was really heavy into petition signing last summer, but I've since like fallen off that wagon because I do feel like over time, as we start to focus on the things that we tend to focus on and prioritize, we sort of lose that sense of urgency that we need to like really make change. So I think that with the information distribution and the further education of ourselves, we can come to understand exactly how we can get involved in the reframing and the restructuring of our legislative bodies and our governmental infrastructure. So, you know, baby steps, and, you know, it's really the brunt of it. And, you know, we're at the final segment with resources. I have many links that I am just gonna throw in the chat right now, and I will I'll give a little background on each one.
Yeah, I want to throw in some words of hope here, you know.
Yeah.
There will come a time, you know, the biggest kind of opponents to climate change awareness right now is fossil fuel industries, you know, greedy executives that want to keep their money from oil or what have you. Eventually they'll die out, and the new breed of greedy people, still harmful to society. But if you're, say, an upstart 28-year-old evil person that wants to exploit the earth, you can't exploit the earth if it's no longer there. You know, if climate change is happening, if tsunamis are happening, it's going to mess with your budget margins. So at some point, there's going to be a shift where the fossil fuel industries, they'll move and try and monopolize renewable energy, which will be better for the planet. Still something we have to deal with. That could be issues there. But at some point, humanity's going to make real strides towards addressing this climate change issue. And I think I know we'll come out on top.
Oil tax. Sorry.
Agreed. I mean, I think what you said is probably the zinger here, is that if there's no earth to exploit, if there are no well people to exploit, then you lose anyway.
And then where do we go?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Guys, I didn't know what I didn't know what to expect from this podcast. I kind of thought, I'm just gonna kind of sit back and listen. And I know I have some opinions about climate and climate change, and even how disease. I think that's where we are at this moment, is we have to be very careful about what's happening in the climate, and how it will eventually affect us in terms of our health. And over time, I think if the climate continues to decline, then our health will continue inevitably, no matter how healthy you live it, right? I don't care how many supplements you're taking, or, how many vegetables you're eating. The truth of the matter is if it's all being grown in the earth that is dying, and we are consuming something that's coming from something that is dying, eventually it will affect us in the same way. And I think, I don't know, I think that's the drastic. We are consuming things that are coming from a dying planet. What the hell do you think is going to happen to you? I don't even know. I mean, that's the end point. I'm going to have to put that in the comments. Go ahead. Any last?
Put life in, love in. And the fact that we are connected, the healing starts within us individually. And once we see the value in ourselves on a deeper level, it's like, I need to take care of my mama too, Mother Earth. Because if she is nothing, who am I? You know what I'm saying? Not just worship as in worship. I mean, whatever, but like that's the connection.
Yeah,
I agree.
Certainly. And like, we did not even get into the efforts that the government is taking to band together with other governmental bodies in other countries to help reduce the average global temperature. Because, I'm not going to open up the can of worms right now, but that was something that I spent like 2 hours today researching, and I ended up scrapping all of it because it wasn't really relevant. But that's something that I feel is a fascinating topic to really research just independently, because I kind of went down this whole rabbit hole of like understanding formulas of how to convert, parts per million of carbon saturation in the atmosphere, of carbon concentration, and then convert that to how many gigatons of carbon is concentrated in the atmosphere, and then comparing the percentages and whatnot. And it's like, it is definitely interesting to see what's going on, especially with the Paris Agreement. That was a huge thing like last year, because Trump withdrew from the Paris Agreement, and then Joe Biden was immediately like, okay, so we're gonna re-sign that.
Back.
All right, we're back in it.
I'm not sure if people even know what that was. I did in the chat, global government effort, look it up. You know what I mean? Because I do think that's something that it is going to take a global effort. It's not going to be able to be one country that does it. It's just not going to work that way.
Yeah,
and it's a really good thing. It's like you're saying, baby steps. It's not some radical, we need to change everything. It's like, okay, climate change is an issue. Let's set a year goals, and as a world, let's tackle this. That's what the agreement is. So yeah, definitely do some research on it, but it's a very good piece of legislation.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I mean, that was it for the most
Guys,
part.
yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think that we can definitely talk about this again from another perspective, and I think it'll come up again and other things that we find ourselves talking about. We're going to be meeting this week as a group to get our stuff together for April. So as always, at the end of the month, I invite people that have topics that they would like to see us discuss, that they would also like to be a part of in terms of the discussion. Please just hit the page and let us know, the Facebook page, and let us know. We will definitely talk about them in our meetings and determine how we can present them to our community. This was, for me, I think probably one of the most interesting because I learned more in this podcast. Just things that I didn't that I thought I knew or thought I understood, and I got some clarity about things tonight. So thank you, Bailey, and thank you, Darius,
Bailey.
for coming up with the topic, and then Bailey for putting so much work into creating one hell of an outline. You better go on, boy. Go on with yourself, boy. Go on.
Go on.
More to come, I can assure you.
Darius is going to be hearing people talk like that in the next couple months. We off in Jamaica. We're going to rub it in, just so y'all know. A little bit. Just a little, but thank you guys so much for joining us, and be sure to share with your friends. This will be here on the page so that you can definitely come back. Darius and I are going to work this week on trying to get the rest of this stuff up to our YouTube channel. We had some situations, but we're working on them. So I do have all the info for us, Darius, so we can talk about that later. But thank you, Previn. Great conversation, he says. Excited to get deeper into this and other convos. I want to go back really quick because Natasha said something to us, and I think this will be a great way. She says she's so proud of you all and to be connected to such beautiful people. We are the change that we want to see. And that is all we're trying to be, is that change. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. Any final words?
Reduce, reuse, recycle. With no vision, there is no ambition.
Recycle. Yeah. Yes. Wait. We got to put those in. Hold on. Reduce, reuse.
And I'll be working to get a print of the no vision without ambition t-shirts. That can be the first line of merch.
Oh, wait. Recycle. Did I spell recycle? It's not right. We're trying to make. And then what's the last thing you said? No.
I said no vision without ambition.
Oh, I like that.
Now that is a perfect way to say good night, good people. We look forward to seeing you guys in a week. Take care of yourselves.
Take care, y'all.
And take care of each other.
Peace.
Peace.
Let me stop the recording, guys.